So full access, in case you have not heard, is going to be filling the shoes left by pause on error as a developer conference by developers for developers, in which we will talk all things Claris and all things developers. We want to really have a nice environment that's smaller than what you would see at Engage, one where everybody has plenty of opportunities to connect, make new friends, and show their stuff and get advice and share what's interesting and and give you some opportunities to grow as a developer. We're planning this from October 20 through the 23rd, so basically 3 nights, pretty much 3.5 days. We should have, for the most part, 3 sessions going at all times. We are planning to do this in the Silicon Valley area, which also makes it a lot easier for a lot of folks who are FileMaker developers to come visit. We are, the last 4 pauses have been held out way in the boonies of Georgia, and that has been a little bit challenging. So one of the things that we will be doing here, this is very abbreviated, the type of sessions that we're going to be doing are going to be determined by the attendees themselves. It's their conference, though we do have some sessions kind of lined up. And we basically are doing 3 types of sessions, 3 flavors, just to kind of give you a real brief overview. One is presentations, kind of the old standard, followed by discussions. And those will be primarily technology sessions. Secondly, we're going to do interactive presentations where the presenter can be as part of a panel or a single person, but we invite the attendees to basically interrupt and just make it more of a discussion than anything else. Plus, we have sessions on work-life balance, which are some of the more exciting sessions that we are going to be giving. And we're going to fire off just an initial session on the first night on mentoring folks on how to be a better presenter. That was a session that was held back in New Orleans a long time ago. And if I had not attended that session, I probably wouldn't be here talking right now. So those have quite meaningful impact, and they help kind of loosen everybody up. We recognize that for the most part that most of us Claris developers at heart are introverts, and give you some opportunities to come out of your shell a little bit. Plus, a lot of whatever is on the experimental workboard that people are working on, the type of things that you, Xandon, have been working on. And we are not bound by what is on Claris's agenda. There will be sessions on AI, but that is totally up to the developers. And some sessions could also be critical of new technologies as well. What's the downside of some of the stuff that we're working on? The only last thing I'll put on here for this meeting is that we also wanted to make it extremely affordable. Prices for the conference is under $1,000, which includes room and board. And we have a few lower cost options, including commuter options. So not everybody will feel a need to stay there. So, so package this up for under $1,000, where the only additional cost is your airfare or your transportation to get there. We think is a pretty sweet deal compared to what you pay at Claris. We're excited. We got 15 volunteers that are working their little tails off getting this thing together. So I hope you all decide to come. It'll be well worth your time.
My name's Xandon Frogget, of course. And I've been working in FileMaker for over 25 years, and I've been with Portage Bay since 2015. So this is my 10th year with Portage Bay Solutions, and recently presented my first time at Engage 2025, and I did a presentation about hosting local LLMs and leveraging them and using them. It was a really super fun event and very stressful, but I got it out, and I think it went pretty good. So there were several pieces that I didn't show in that presentation, and I wanted to share with the group just so that everybody who might be trying different methods to host their own local LLMs has plenty of options, and they don't feel like whatever ones I did at the Engage session are the only ones. So today I was going to go through and install on a Windows 19 machine, which it's a little bit different than the normal recommended install for hosting your local LLM. I mean, it's not different in that it's fully recommended. It's just you have to do a couple of different things in order to install it on Windows 19, Windows Server 19. So I'll go ahead and do a walkthrough of Windows 19, which is a little bit different. In the Engage 2025, I did an install on a Mac OS Intel chip. And then, of course, if you have a M1, M2, any of the M series Macs, you would want to do it where you install it natively on the Mac for Ollama. And then for the interface one, then I would go ahead and use Docker container to control it, so you don't have a web app floating around in your operating system. But it's totally fine to do it either way. So for this one, since we're on a Windows machine, everything has to be installed natively. So just to make it clean, we're doing everything native install on this Windows 19 machine. So the first thing that we want to do, and you know, I'm overcomplicating it with all my words. In order to install it, it's pretty straightforward. Go to Ollama, and we go to the download, and we just select the down. You know, by default, it's going to automatically figure out which one we probably want to download. For this one, it's a Windows, so we download it for Windows, and sped it up a little bit so that we don't have to wait for it all to pull down. But it goes ahead and pulls down a copy, and once it's down, go ahead and launch it. And now Ollama is running and it's ready to get started. So it's really straightforward to install it. So in this instance, we're going to install it locally on this Windows machine, which is where we would normally host a FileMaker server. But one caveat there is we don't want to host it on the machine that we're hosting our FileMaker server on. And the reason there is it's pretty GPU intensive and CPU intensive. And if you host it on the same machine as your FileMaker server, probably end up with performance issues on your FileMaker server whenever you're trying to perform inference using your, when you're trying to perform inference or ask questions basically of the LLM models. So it's not recommended that you do them on the same machine. So in this instance, again, I'm doing an EC2 instance, Windows 19. This is a 16 gigabyte NVIDIA GPU, and because it's Windows 19, it doesn't support out of the box some of the Docker features that you would get. So let's continue on with the install.
I wonder if
yeah, go ahead.
the server and the Ollama would work well on a machine with lots of multiple cores.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what you want. So depending on, it works best on NVIDIA GPUs or M-Core series GPUs. And you want to start with at least 16 gigabytes of GPU RAM or on an NVIDIA GPU. And for the M series Mac chips, you want to start at least 16 gigabytes of RAM as well. And then you also want a fast SSD to be able to pull the model in, so you're not waiting for that initial load time delay. And you can see it's now running, and we click here to start. We click that, and that's going to go ahead and open your PowerShell. And in PowerShell, it lets us know to run your first model, you're going to do the Ollama run Llama 3.2, and that would take care of downloading the model and installing it. So I'm going to go ahead and key that in, Ollama run Llama 3.2. You can see it goes ahead and downloads the model, checks the manifest, make sure everything's good, and lets you know successfully installed it. So everything's now running. We can now perform inference on it. So we can ask it a question. So tell me an interesting fact about the Roman Empire. It's going to take a moment, and then start responding, right? Just as an LLM should. But it's really slow, right? And this particular one that we're running it on is an NVIDIA GPU, so it should be accelerated to run fast for what we're looking for. And the key here is we need to install the NVIDIA drivers to take advantage of the NVIDIA GPU. If you're on an M series Mac, you don't have to install drivers. It automatically leverages them. But if you're on a Windows and you're going to take advantage of the NVIDIA chip, you need to use it. You can use CPU only. You don't have to have an NVIDIA GPU, but you do have to have CUDA installed to run the NVIDIA drivers. So pretty straightforward. You just go to NVIDIA, select the type of GPU that you have, what operating system. You can see Windows Server 2019, and we're going to pull down the CUDA toolkit. Find it. It gives us the right one, and then we go ahead and pull that down. And so I'm just going to jump past that because that's, standard GPU install or standard NVIDIA tools install. Now we're checking to see that that NVIDIA is installed, and so down here in the taskbar you can see we've got the little NVIDIA icon letting us know that the NVIDIA driver has been installed. Now we can go ahead and process
it. Somebody is confused about the local language model that you're showing this on being put on a server as opposed to putting on your local machine.
Oh yeah, I've got one. Yeah. I did a local machine on the. I did the install on a local machine for the Engage presentation, and I have it running on my laptop that's on the other machine. I also do have it running locally on this machine, but I have to spin up Docker. And this laptop that we're looking at right now is an old laptop. So when I run it, run inference, everything slows down, and I can't really host a Zoom session on it. So this machine is just a little old to be able to run CPU inference, but that was never my intention. If that's why I'm using an EC2 instance here, because it's easy for me to set up and run and test with. And I was going to show on the Windows machine, but since I can't connect to Zoom, I can't show you from that machine a fully local installation and it running in a Docker. And that's not even a Windows Server machine. But
you would want a server if you're integrating with some FileMaker solution.
Yeah, absolutely. For testing, you can install it locally, just on your laptop. You can install it anywhere for testing. When you're going for production, then you definitely want it on a server, or let's say your FileMaker server is being hosted on a Mac Mini or a Mac, some sort of Mac hardware, and you just want to get another one of those, and make sure that you just don't want to host your production of your LLM hosting on that same machine. So you might get this a performant Mac Mini or something more powerful or beefy, anything in the M series. But this gives you the ability to try it out. So yeah, if you were hosting locally and you had your own little Mac setup that you wanted to host your FileMaker server on, and I would just host them on separate machines so that you're not impacting your FileMaker server.
Gotcha.
Yep. All right. So let's see. Go back in. NVIDIA is running, and so now I'm checking, right? And I'm just running a command in PowerShell, NVIDIA SMI, which is lets you see what NVIDIA what NVIDIA graphics cards are available and what's being used, and so on and so forth. And you can see in this one I've got a Tesla T4, and it has the addresses and everything for it, and how much wattage is being used for it, and so on and so forth. And at that point, now I'm going to go ahead and run that Ollama command again, now that I've installed the NVIDIA drivers And now we can ask it to give us an interesting fact. And now you can see the it's performing much faster, right? So after you've installed Ollama, which, just to recap, just download, install it, run it, test to make sure it's running. Make sure you've installed your NVIDIA drivers if you're on an NVIDIA machine. If you're on a Mac, M1, 2, 3, 4, that you don't need to install any NVIDIA drivers for that. Test it out, make sure that it's running from terminal. Ultimately, though, it's helpful to have a GUI to be able to interact with it. So what I recommend in this situation for Ollama is to install Open WebUI. And Open WebUI was originally bundled with Ollama, and it's split off into its own application. So now you can download it separate, and it's got some really cool tools that are super user friendly, and makes it pretty nice to be able to connect to your FileMaker solution and test things and do all sorts of stuff. So to get that installed, since we're installing both of these natively, we're going to need to do a pip install. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to Open WebUI docs, and I'm scrolling down to the manual installation. And we're going to pick the installation that we want to do is going to be the pip install. And you can check your version, Windows Server 19. For Open WebUI, you need to use Python 3.11. There's newer versions of Python that are available, but I ran into issues trying to run those. So I'm sure it'll update over time as all these Python dependencies change, but currently, if you're trying to do it, make sure you have Python 3.11 installed. And by default, it's a different version of Python that's installed on the AMI for this EC2. So,
do you need to deinstall the version of Python that's on a machine before you install?
No, you just need to specify it. And then, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I get it downloaded and that it's running. So I'm going to download and install Python 3.11. And I'm pulling down the 64-bit version for the Windows installer. And we're going to use after we get it downloaded and installed, and there's some things when you're installing it that you also want to keep in mind. And this is a little bit different than the Mac install, and then a little bit different than the Ubuntu install, but this is why I wanted to go through the Windows version, you want to, there's a couple of things like making sure you have Python 3.11 installed. You want to make sure and add the Python path to your, the Python executable path by checking that little box there when you do the install. And then after it finishes its install, you want to disable path length limits so that you're not running into path length limits for Python. So now we can go ahead and open up our PowerShell again, and we're just now going to check, make sure the Python version that's running is 3.11, and we are good there. It's now running Python 3.11. Now we're going to install UV, which is a Python environment manager, similar to Conda or Mini Conda. And if you're installing from the FileMaker server install, they use Mini Conda to manage the Python environment for installing the Hugging Face tensor. But for this, I think that the UV is a little easier to use, and it's recommended for the Open WebUI install. So you can pick whichever one you want. Just need to manage that. It's super helpful if you're running Python, then that you're running something's helping you to manage that environment, so you don't have all sorts of different issues and package issues. So that's what we're doing at this point, is we're installing UV. So it's installed, and now I can go ahead and check, make sure that UV is running, and we got the correct version, and we do indeed have UV running. So those are the two pain points when you're installing on Windows 19. Make sure that you're running Python 3.11, and make sure that if you're doing UV for your package manager for Python and environments, that it's installed. And with those two, now we can go ahead and pull the Windows installer off the Open WebUI page. And this is going to go ahead and do the pip install the Open WebUI using a Python install using pip. So goes ahead and downloads it. And of course, that's super fast. It's going to take, probably more like 10 minutes to download. And after it downloads, it's now up and running. And so now we have Open WebUI running. Now we can go to a web browser and we can go to that localhost 8080 to look at it on this machine and open WebUI. First time we do Open WebUI, we need to create an admin account. So in this instance, I'm just, me, email address, and the password. This is the root admin account password, so you don't want to forget it. Otherwise, you'll have to reinstall it. And that's it. Now we've got Open WebUI installed, and it's all set to work with our Ollama instance. So you can see we've already got the Llama 3.2 latest that we installed when we installed Ollama. When we typed in that command in the PowerShell, it went ahead and pulled it down. So we can right away use that. So we'll run a test with that, make sure that it's working. And that's great. Now it's responding good. And this is now some of the fun stuff that you can do with Open WebUI. And there's a couple other like friend sort of viewers. I'm not sure what you'd call these, like Open WebUI, that allow you to interact with your different LLMs. This particular one has some pretty cool things that's really helpful from a FileMaker standpoint. Because when you're doing FileMaker, you're going to try a bunch of different models to figure out which one's going to work best with your FileMaker calls, and trying to figure out which model is going to be most efficient is half the journey. So I'm going to go ahead and install Gemma 3, which is one of Google 3's models called Gemma 3. It's an open source model, and it just came out like a few weeks back, maybe 3-4 weeks. It's multimodal and it handles, I think, 128 different languages. So it's a really cool model for being able to do all sorts of fun stuff and works well with FileMaker. So to install it, you basically just type in Gemma 3. Gemma, as we type, it says pull Gemma 3 from Ollama, and I just go ahead and click that and it'll start pulling it down. After it finishes, it installs it, checks it. Now we need to refresh the browser to be able to see the model that we just loaded. And so now you can see we've got two models that are in there. So I'm going to test Llama, do a new one. We do Gemma 3 and I say hi, just to test to make sure that it's working. It takes a moment to load the model and now it responds. So that's working. So now let's do a test image. Since it's multimodal, let's drop an image into it and see how well it handles an image. So for this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and take a screen grab of some of the text that's on the screen. So I open up my snipping tool and I take a snip of, I'm just going to take a snip of the host information upper right hand corner here, save that out as a PNG. And now that we've got that, we can open it, start a new chat session, and we're just going to drag that image right on in. So now it's in there, and now I can just hit return, and now it's going to, from the image, tell me what's there, and it does a really good job of, I mean, it's pretty straightforward text, so it's not working really hard, but it's nice that you can just pass this, and it, immediately tells you everything that's in the image. So it's working. The multimodal portion of that one is working as well.
So can you control the look of this Open UI page with CSS?
Yes, and you can do, well, yeah, give me just a second. Let me, so here we are in the admin console Open WebUI where I've logged in with my root credential. There's a couple of things more that I should probably go over in order to work with FileMaker. You're going to need an API key And for this instance, I've got it running at an IP address. This is within our VPN, so it's secure, but you would want to put a domain in front of this if you want it to be outside your VPN and provide outside access. But for working with FileMaker, if everything is in the VPN, then this works totally fine. So in order to get API keys for FileMaker to make calls to my Ollama instance that I have hosted at this address, we just go into settings, and under account, you can say, see the API keys here will show, and initially there would be, actually in this particular one I hadn't set up. Cool, so now you get to see it. So under API key, we just go ahead and say create new API key, and then we're gonna copy that API key. And we can go back into our FileMaker instance, this particular instance, and for API keys, I store those in a global script for set LLM set global variables. So here's my LLM API key. This is my old one. I'm going to put in our new one. There we go. Okay. So it's set in there, and then the LLM host is still at that IP address 3000, right? So from the FileMaker side, now I want to just test to make sure that I have a connection there. So I do have a call set up where it goes ahead and performs a call. It loads that global variable in, and then it does an insert from URL. And that particular process isn't overly complicated, but I can go through that really quick if you'd like. So for this one, I'm going to test Gemma 3. So now it's installed, downloaded, refresh the browser, and we got 3.2 latest. So that's the one that I'm going to use in my FileMaker solution for my model. Yeah, so here's our response back from Open WebUI's API interacting with our Ollama installed on that instance. And then if we come down here to our response, I said hi, and it says, hello, how can I assist you? So some just really basic checking to make sure the API is working. At this point, let me go ahead and go into the script. So the request itself is, this was one I'd used as an example, so it's a little bit different, but it's a little overly complicated, I should say. But the first thing that I want to do is set my API keys. So that's where the global script calls and sets those globals. So I check to see if they're already installed, and if they aren't, then I go ahead and install them. And then the next part is down here where we need to set the a data variable that we're going to pass. And in this particular instance, I'm using a insert from URL call. So I'm just doing a curl call. And for the curl call, we have to specify the request. So the request we want, we need to create a JSON format of the information that we're going to pass in the curl call. For that, we need to format a JSON element. It's going to say the model, what type of model it is, and then the message, the role, and the content, just like this down here. This is our example. And so I'm just building that from using the JSON set element command. And then this particular one is if you're doing vision and you want to send an image, you need to base64 encode your container that you're going to send your image data from. And so in this example, I don't have it in the, I don't have the base64 encoded down here because it's, that would be a really big chunk of text. But this is an example of what that that JSON set element is, and it goes under messages content, and index 0 for the base64 and index 1 for the actual prompt. I'm setting the URL, and for the URL here, you can see just using that global LLM host that I set. In order to make these calls, it's API chat completions, and all of this is in the documentation for Open WebUI. And then the options that I'm going to be using for the curl call, for my options variable, we're doing the xpost, the data, and sometimes if you're not used to using curl calls in FileMaker, this can hang you up is trying to figure out how to format and set up your actual curl call. So In this instance, we're doing an X post. We've got, it's quoted in quotes, the dash dash data, space, at symbol, and then the dollar data is the FileMaker variable, space, quote, and then we have our headers, application type. The authorization bearer token is the API key. And then I always add in at the end this dump header and put it to a FileMaker variable called response headers. And that allows me to see the response dump header because there's usually more information in there than sometimes is returned initially by the curl. So with those variables set, now we can go ahead and do our insert from URL call. So here's our insert from URL with the options. So the target is going to, of course, be my URL. And the specified curl call is options. And then it goes ahead and runs it. And then we'll get a response back, something like this. And then from there, you can parse it out. So some really cool stuff, and I did show this in at the Engage session, and we've got some documents here, some examples of different things that I had tested with the Gemma 312B model. One where I took a screen capture of some table information out of FileMaker, and I went ahead and let me see if I can do this zoom window around so I can see my buttons on my FileMaker file. So I took that, I passed that in, and I told it to give it back. You can see my prompt, it says output this in a JSON format, right? So there it takes it, gives it back in JSON format. Then I tell it that to take that JSON and create an HTML page that displays the information and makes it look pretty. Only write the HTML output, nothing else, right? And so it does that, and then I can open that in a web viewer, and we've taken from a screen capture, we've got all of the text and everything available, and now we can look at it, we can interact with it. So that's kind of fun. Another example here is, this is one where I showed off, this was some cheese from Met Market here in Seattle, and I love cheese. And so I just took a picture of it, and what can you tell me about this cheese? What does it pair well with? And it output all of the information in Markdown. I told it to turn it into HTML and give it back to me in a web page. And of course, I don't need to show those steps, but just so you can see what's kind of going on underneath, it gives it back, and now I can do it in a web viewer, and it tells me all about this Manchego cheese, which is a really cool cheese. Different flavor profiles, complex, nutty, just like this cast. Some things that it pairs well with. Dried figs are also really yummy with this. So some fun stuff about cheese, Anyway, really cool stuff that you can do with FileMaker. This is just sort of some examples you can do. Here's another one with, have it do my kids' homework. And I won't go into this too much in detail, but it pulls it out, and then I can convert it in and look at it in a web page. You can see it. How do I solve it? Step one, distribute and isolate the terms, isolate the constant, and so on and so forth, and basically walk them through their homework, which is kind of cool. And then the last one here, where I took we have a client that does a lot of, they do a lot of product that they place, and they have all of their products that they host on a website. And I think it's really interesting to be able to use some of these multimodal ones to be able to gather information and even write marketing for it. But so given this screen, this photograph of the back of some chocolate, it output it and converted it into an HTML page. And you can see it's Seattle chocolate, tells us all of the breakdown, gives us the ingredients, since it is writing it to HTML and it's a large language model, it's doing a little extra lifting, and it lets us, give us a website so we can go to it, the barcode at the bottom. So with very little lift, you can do a lot of really complex things without having to think very hard about it. You do, of course, want to check and make sure that all of this stuff is true and correct, but it's surprising what it can do. And of course, it's getting better as we go forward. So in that FileMaker solution, right, I can also make it accessible where they can access the local large language model via the Open WebUI and ask it questions. But I don't want to I could do it with the admin account. But for this particular one, I'll just walk through really quick in Open WebUI how to set it up for different users. So if we come down here to my name, and I go ahead and go at admin panel. In the admin panel, you can see I don't have any users in here currently, so I'm just going to add a user. And one of the examples that's really easy to comprehend, of course, these could be different employees, but what's super easy it would be to the full name. We'll just call this. I want to be able my kids to be able to use this, so I'll just do kid1 and enter in their email address. This is just a fake email address one, but. And because this is locally hosted, it doesn't, none of this is, this is all being managed by me. I'm going to put in a fake password for it, but I do need to remember that password. So kid1@gmail.com, right? And so now I've given that, I've created a user that can now log in on that FileMaker interface. And we can set we can create groups and we can control access for the groups. I'm not going to bother saving that. So we'll create a group and we'll call this kids, or let's call it family. Family, whatever you want. My kids need help with homework. So now we've got a group for family, and I can go ahead and set the permissions on it. Tell it what models it has access to. We can control all sorts of really kind of fun things. I'm just going to leave it at the blank. I'm going to add the user as the kid to this, and so that group is set. And permissions. Yep. All right. And now if I go into settings and we go under models, I can take and we can say, we can give them access to a specific model. So I'm going to go under this Gemma 3. We just added that Gemma 3. I'm going to set it so that it can be used by the group family. And we can put, we can do all sorts of stuff. We can put guardrails on how they can access this model. So for the system prompt, I'll say, please help my kids, kids with their homework. Do not do it for them. Help them learn. Right? Something like that, little guardrails, so that it just won't automatically do their homework for them. It's hidden down here. Oh, it is. Yeah, so save and update. So now that Gemma 3 latest model is now should be accessible from FileMaker for a user kid1 if they log in. All right, was it kid1 at gmail.com? See if I got it right. Yeah, now they've got Gemma 3 latest. Now we can say, hi, can you do my homework? Yeah, anyway, and so there it is, right? Helping the kids with homework. But that's the only model that they have access to. And you can add different models and control it and that sort of thing. So what some other fun stuff is, let me give them access to another model as well in this particular instance. And so let's do, actually, I'm not going to do it from the FileMaker side. I'm going to do it from here because it'll just be easier. Then I don't have to add a bunch of models to the users. But if you're testing from FileMaker, you're going to want to be able to test from different models at the same time. So I can select which models. So we want to do Gemma 3 latest as a test, and we want to do Llama 3.2 latest. So now we can see between Gemma 3 and Llama 3.2, which is going to have a better answer. So and you can have it, it'll run inference for in both models at the same time. You can add more and more and more. So when you're testing a bunch of different models, you can see what the output's going to be all at the same time. So this is super helpful from a FileMaker standpoint when you're like, what's the response going to be like? And you can test it before you start putting the request in your actual FileMaker solution, right? Another cool thing about using Open WebUI is we can see the chat history for the kids. So if you're going to open this up in File and you wanted to use it in FileMaker and let the employees be able to ask questions, you can also see their chat history. Or you can turn it on or off as to what chat history you want to see. But in the admin panel under the user, we can see the chats. So homework session, and we can see, oh, there's their homework session and here's their interaction with them. So it gives you a lot of really nice control for being able to, if you wanted to open it up to users of your company. And you can, another really cool thing that you can do, Open WebUI currently only supports a single model, and that's ChatGPT. But you can use a proxy service like Light LLM to provide a proxy endpoint for all of your different LLMs. And then if you'd be using APIs for all the different like ChatGPT and Claude and all sorts of different LLMs. But instead of having to pay a monthly, like $20 a month for every user that's going to need access to it, if you're a company, right? You got like a small company like Portage Bay, we got 10, 15 employees. And we wouldn't want to pay $20 a month for every single one for all the users. It's like it becomes extremely cost prohibitive really quick. You can do the APIs and you can control what the API usage is, but you can provide API access and load up API, and the API is a per use cost. So you just load money into the API, and then depending on which LLM models they're using, determines sort of the price. And of course, if you're hosting local LLMs, you get those sort of free included after you've got your upfront costs for whatever hardware or instances you might be hosting. But it works really handy. So for me, not this environment for hosting with my kids, and I didn't come up with this idea. I had watched a really good YouTube video about it that I need to find and put the link in the chat session, where he kind of goes through this exact instance. It's like sharing it with your family, right? I've got ChatGPT, I've got Claude, I've got Gemini, all of my different accounts, Perplexity, and I'm paying $20 a month on all of them, but I'm not going to pay for my kids to be able to access it. But I want to give them access to these different models. I could do a hosting, give them access to local LLMs, and at the same time, using Light LLM as a proxy, I can proxy in all the APIs for the other ones, and then you just load up, $5, $10, $20 on each of those. And then if they use it, great. If they don't use it, you're not wasting a bunch of money. So sort of additional ways that you can use this type of model with Open WebUI, which I think is super, super cool. And the landscape's changing so much. Like what was available just a few months ago has changed completely. It's gotten better, and it's only going to get better. So I think if you're planning on like where we're at right now being the limit of what you're able to do, the stuff we're doing right now, it wasn't available a year ago. You just couldn't get the accuracy, and I think the hard question about adoption is like, do you have any clients that are using it yet? And I think that this has happened so fast that as developers, we haven't quite gotten the opportunity to test it all well enough to start to implement it. And it's changed so much, so the opportunities keep changing as well. And but I think that in general, most of society is starting to be very familiar with using different LLMs and different chat models to answer tasks and use them as tools, right, to find information. I definitely know the kids are really keen to it. That they use it to help them with all sorts of different. My kids use it for helping them with their homework, simple, geometry homework, which, they can't get that. It's hard to find somebody who can sit with them and actually walk them through problem solving stuff where, they're stuck for a moment, and trying to get access to a tutor is difficult, but they can just take a picture of it, and the chat models will help them get through and make sure that they're doing it correctly. So yeah, I think that might be it. It's just adopting to the change. It's been changing so much. It's hard to, it's hard to get to that point. I think if, 5 years from now, it's going to look completely different than it is now. But, and maybe, if FileMaker will grow with it and so on and so forth. But it's hard to expect what life's going to be like in 5 years when, and I think AI is going to, I think I have a hard time not having an expectation that it's going to be pretty profound going forward. Yeah. FileMaker actually has they've got some, a lot of integration work put towards that. And so they've got documentation on how to do it with the current version, and then I think there's expectations with the next version that's going to make it even easier. And those involve basically setting up a local LLM. If you need privacy and don't want to use some of the standard embedding models, like those with ChatGPT's embedding model, or you wanted to use your own, then installing that. If you're not worried about sharing that information with the big cloud providers, then you just make an API call, pass the information on to the cloud provider, and it'll send back the embedding, and then you can use that. And there's documentation for how to do that with FileMaker and FileMaker Server. And then the better way to do that to protect the data is to do local LLM, and they've got some great tutorials to do that as well for using it for. Yeah, different models and different interfaces. You can use, yeah. Theirs is in more of a headless model, installed Hugging Face, but you can install different ones for Hugging Face as well that have nice interfaces. They're just two different sort of model groups that are available for open source, and you can do everything in Ollama that you can with the other one. As far as embeddings, there's different embedding models that you can use. I believe that most of the models can be used for embedding, as long as, yeah, I believe that most of them can, like Ollama 3.2 and those different ones, they can be used for generating embedding. But yeah, you'd have to check the documentation. I haven't used them for embedding. I would use ChatGPT for most of my testing, and then switching it over to one. If I were going to do it for FileMaker, I would follow the FileMaker documentation and which ones that they recommend. The only thing that you really have to be careful of there is if you're embedding a bunch of FileMaker data, you want to use the same embedding model for all of it, and then you're kind of locked in on that. If you change embedding models, you need to redo all of the.
Xandon, would you say this whole kind of AI stuff is similar? Like, I remember in 8th grade, my dad brought home an Apple IIe. And so you have this giant screen computer that doesn't have much memory, the external drives, floppy disks, the dot matrix printer, all of it assembled separately, and now fast forward, now we have iPhones, which can do a lot of what that all did. Do you see that this is similar now? Obviously, we'll go a lot faster, but do you feel like it's a lot of that same kind of piecemeal, putting together the different parts, just your kind of custom creation, what you like best?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, we're still at the cutting edge. Like, if you wait just 2 years, like we might not even be needed in the loop of getting information. It's moving so fast, it's hard to tell exactly where do you stop, and and adopt whatever it is that's the current trend, and how long is that going to exist before it changes. So it's like if the timeline's moving so much faster than the the
Oh
personal
yeah.
computer in the 80s, but even then it was moving pretty quick, right? But now it's like week after week something completely changes. I'm just amazed how much Gemini has become such a useful tool, where just a few months ago it didn't even seem like they had much of a foothold. Like, they had their models, but their models just weren't very good. And then suddenly,
Yeah.
like overnight, really good models, and you can use them for so many things. And then, as you can see, I was showing in the demo, Gemma 3, and they open sourced it. So, like,
Uh,
yeah, it's hard to tell what the expectation is going to be, but a lot of people, Matthew Berman, I think, is the one that I hear saying it all the time. This is the worst that it's going to be. Today is like the worst that it's going to be. It's going to just continually get better, right? Um, so
well, that's cool. So
yeah,
whatever baseline you're incorporating, you have to incorporate the flexibility and realize whatever you're setting up is not going to be in use for 2 years. You got to build in the flexibility from the
yeah.
beginning.
And the good thing about doing a local LLM as well is you can lock in a model, right? So if you're getting the results that you're wanting from a model, you can lock in that model. That model can be part of your dependency, um, for whatever it is that you're using it for. It's not going to, it does not have to change. Whereas if you're using an API with, like, say, ChatGPT or something, they pull that, like, they had a 4.5 model which was super duper expensive, and they just recently announced that they're sunsetting that, and in because they decided that it wasn't efficient. And so if you built a whole lot of stuff around the 4.5 GPT model, you'd be like, oh, you'd be scrambling. And, like, they want you to roll back to, they've got a new one called 4.1. So the naming convention is all weird, but 4.1 is a better, faster model, costs a whole lot less. So there wouldn't, naturally you'd want to change, but it is a slightly different model. Highly, maybe
Interesting.
more accurate, but yeah, so that's the only hard part. Whereas with the local large language model, like, you can lock it in and use it as a dependency, because it's not going to change. Like, if we did Deepseek R1 and you were really happy with the results that you were getting, it's always going to be there. You don't have to worry about it suddenly changing. And I think that that's another winning point for doing a local LLM versus using one of the cloud providers, is because the cloud providers are definitely going to change over time, generally for the better. But as you're building them in for dependencies in your FileMaker solution, you do kind of probably want to lock in that model so that you don't
Hmm.
end up with inconsistent results down the line.
Hmm.
I'm I'm sort of wondering if there are models that are better to integrate right now. I mean, I'm sure the landscape changes with FileMaker, ones that are more data centric than others.
Definitely. And that was one of the key things about, like, the 4.1 release earlier this week. In one of the videos from chat, or from OpenAI, as they were talking about it, they took a 500,000 token log file, put a needle buried deep of just a few lines of information, and to see if it would be able to find the line of character, whatever it was that was different. And talk about a needle in a haystack kind of problem. It actually had a really high statistic value for being able to pull out what they call needle in a haystack problems, where you're giving it a ton of text and you're asking it for something very minute, and whether or not it can find that and reference it and know about it is big. So I think that the way we're handling data is going to change. We had used we were using it for FileMaker logs to get an idea of some of the different log errors that we were getting, and trying to see different ways of problem solving uh, a problem we were having with one of our clients, where the themes keep crashing, and we're trying to see if there's something in the logs that might be, tell us something more. And anytime you're looking through log files, there's there's a lot of information in there. It's hard to digest all that information. It's hard to make correlations, and that's another opportunity. Large language models makes some of that work a lot easier, a whole lot better and a lot more efficient. And yeah, there's lots of really cool stuff. I really like the multimodal and being able to dynamically change user interface, by just giving it some information and then having it build user interfaces seems like a really cool opportunity.